We are here with part 3 of the step-by-step process on how to write, publish, and launch a nonfiction book. Today, we're going to be covering exactly what it takes to write a high-quality, full-length book in an hour a day. All right, the time has finally come. We've gotten started. We've gotten our outline. Now we got to talk about how to actually write this book. Now, if you're anything like me, the actual writing of the book was the most daunting part. Right? Because if you're not writing the book, then you don't have a book. And if you try to write a book and you're not a good writer, then you're thinking, this is going to suck and who's going to read this book? And then all the limiting beliefs come up. And that was exactly what happened to me. Now, I didn't associate myself as a writer. Didn't claim to be a great writer. And I didn't even think when I was 22 years old, 1 year out of college, that I could write a great book. But here's what I've realized. From that moment, when I had the thoughts, I'm not a writer, I'm not good enough, who's going to read this? Why would anybody care? I pushed through, I got it done, and I created something that was incredibly, incredibly valuable to people around the world. 6 months after I had the idea to write a book, I not only wrote it, but I published it and launched it and became a bestseller for my very first time. What's crazy to think about is that I still don't think that was the best quality book I've ever written in my life. But here's what's really, really cool about it. That book was used in colleges as required reading for their students across the nation. Colleges that are very, very large that you've heard of. And what I've come to realize is that this thing, when you come to write a book, it's not about the best written book. It's about a best-selling book. It's not about being the best writer in the world. It's about being 1 to 2 steps ahead of where your reader is at. And the coolest thing about books in today's world, in my opinion, is that the best books are the ones that I can relate to the most, the ones that I can vibe with, the ones that I can imagine getting to know the author. And so it doesn't have to be written like your 8th grade literary teacher taught you how to write a book. It has to be written in a way that's you. Make it personal. Make it about the reader and tell the reader, right? And when you can build that trust by showcasing your stories and teach them what you're going to teach them and you do these things, not only are you going to have a really, really great book that you're incredibly proud of, but you're going to have a great book that actually drives results and that actually sells, which is the ultimate goal of this. Not just writing a book that is amazingly written with perfect writing and formatting and everything. Because here's the other cool thing. You're going to have a professional editor, a cover designer, and a formatter to help make sure that the book is professional. What we're trying to do right now in this video is we're just trying to write a really high quality book that we're proud of, and we're going to focus on creating the very first draft. My name is Jake Kelfer. I'm a 4-time best-selling author who's turned my books into multiple successful businesses in the speaking, the coaching, and the book publishing space. My last book, Big Idea 2 bestseller, I wrote it in less than an hour a day and I documented the entire process. And that's what we're going to show you right now, some of my best tips and practices. I currently run a publishing house called Big Idea to Bestseller, where we service and help high-level entrepreneurs and executives write, publish, launch, and market nonfiction books for back-end business growth and impact. And I want to share with you my best tips and my best tricks on how you can actually write a full-length book in less than an hour a day. Now, it begins here with understanding the mentality of what's going to come up for you. Because no matter if you're the greatest writer in the world and you love writing and you've written blogs, or if you're a first-time writer and writing has not been your natural medium of sharing ideas. Now, the thing that I always like to think about is that when I got started, I didn't associate as a writer, as I mentioned. But what I did associate as was someone who has the ability to share a great message in the written form. And so if your desire for impact is greater than your fear or your dislike of writing, you can and you will create a really, really amazing book that will do a lot of good for a lot of people. But let's address the perfectionism. This is something that we see many, many people face is, okay, I'm getting ready to write a book. I want it to be perfect. Why do we feel that way? Well, from our experience of working with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of authors, what I've come to learn is that people, when they get ready to write a book, there's so much emotion. It's such an exciting thing. Society views authors at a different level. So it's, I want this to be so good. You're going to put your heart and soul. It feels permanent. And so you want it to be perfect. And while I love that you care, we need to make sure we talk about your rough draft. It's not about being perfect. It's not even about having it be the best thing ever. The goal of the rough draft is to get the stuff out of your head, onto your outline, from the outline into the written form. Okay, now let me ask you a couple questions. Would you expect to speak Spanish perfectly after one lesson? Shoot, would you expect to speak Spanish perfectly after 3 years of high school Spanish? I know I sure didn't, right? Would you expect a kid to be perfect on a bike after their first time riding? Would you expect to go to the NBA if you played one basketball game? Why then do we think that writing a book will be any different? In everything else in life, we're willing to get better and to learn. But when it comes to writing a book, it's, we got to make it perfect. We got to make it the best thing ever on the first try. That's why it's called a rough draft. That's why we call it a doggy draft, because it's rough. Yeah, I know, bad joke, but that's part of the plan here, folks. So writing a book takes time. Writing a great book takes time, and it's a skill set that improves with practice. But what I want to show you is that it doesn't need to take years to write this book. It can take you a month. It can take you days, and you can do it following these best practices. Now, what I want to share with you is there are really a few things that I love when talking about writing a book, and that's the concept of Parkinson's Law. If you've noticed, so far I've talked about the mentality, the reframe, the understanding of it, and I want to talk to you about something called Parkinson's Law, which if you're not familiar, it basically says that time expands to fill the time, that work expands, to fill the time available for completion. Which is a fancy way of saying that if you give yourself a year to write your book, you'll use that whole year to write a book. But if you give yourself 30 days to write a book, you'll only use those 30 days to write your rough draft. And so I believe in this concept. And the only way this concept works, though, is if a book is truly your priority. If a book isn't your priority, you're going to push it down and you're going to delay it. And that's why I want to encourage you to create what we call book time. This is a time on your calendar that you commit to. Whether it's 30 to 60 minutes in the morning, 30 to 60 minutes when the kids go to bed, 30 to 60 minutes on your lunch break, or it's 2 days a week for 2 to 3 hours each day, and you just lock in. Whatever it is, you have to make book writing a priority. Because if we can set ourselves up to create the right environment, to create the right mentality, to create the right mindset, then the actual work of writing the book becomes so much easier. So let's talk about this, okay? And I encourage people to write their rough draft quickly. And we've had clients and people that we've helped that have written their rough draft in 27 days, 29 days, 34 days. As you can see, Jake, I finished it in 29 days. I can't believe how easy it was to write my book, and I've written a pretty good one too. I'm 25 days in, I'm over 66% done. And these aren't 10,000 word, small little pamphlet style books. These are full-length books that go on to be published, that go on to help these authors make thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in back-end revenue in the form of speaking engagements, coaching clients, product sales, etc. So you're really creating a really, really great book, all right? One of the things that I believe in is that we do not, at Big Idea to Bestseller, sacrifice quality for speed. So we'll always encourage people to create the highest quality book in the shortest amount of time so that you can get the best results. Because, after all, a book's going to last for a very, very long time. So we want you to do it right. So here are the 3 core sections of a book. When you understand how to break down the book, it makes the writing part flow even easier. And when you combine this with the outline you just created from part 2 of this series, well, now it starts to flow much, much smoother. So the first section of every book is going to be, and we're talking about nonfiction books. The first section is going to be the setting the stage section. Now, you can do this in a variety of chapters. You can do this as an introduction. You can do this as a blend. But essentially, what you want to address here are 3 key components: problem, credibility, expectation. The problem, we need to address very, very early on, what is the problem that people are currently experiencing? Because they're picking up your book because your title or subtitle captured their attention, because what they're seeking is what your book should be about. And that's why nonfiction books speak to the audience. It captures their attention. The title's intriguing. The subtitle is very, very fascinating. We'll do a whole thing on title, subtitle in another video. But the first part is, what is the problem? The second part is the credibility. Why are you the person best suited to solve that particular problem? And then the third part is the expectation. What can you expect as a reader by reading my book? And if you can lay out the problem, you can lay out why you're the person to solve the problem, and then you could show them here's what to expect for the remainder of this book. That gets people to make a decision very early on of this is for me or this is not for me. And if they say this is not for me, that is okay. If they say this is for me, Now they know what to expect. So now you can absolutely crush it by delivering them with incredible value and showcasing your knowledge, sharing your stories, and doing everything that we talked about in your outline. This is how you really want to set the stage. The second section of your book, this is where you're going to dig into your core chapters. These are your solution chapters. So you're going to have your frameworks, your methodologies, and your process. If you have a 12-week coaching program, this could be your 12 chapters. If you have a 3-month consulting agreement, maybe you could break down what you do in month 1, month 2, month 3 as your process, as your framework. Ideally, if we're using the book to generate something on the back end, you want the book to be directly correlated to the thing that you sell, right? People buy, one of the things that people buy the most of is the same thing they just bought. And this is something that I've heard Alex Hormozi say. I was actually at one of his workshops, and he was like, one of the best upsells that we've ever had was selling them more of the thing they just bought. And this is exactly what we want to do, is we want to get them in the door. We want to give them incredible value so that they can actually solve a problem. And then we want to be there for a higher level of support on the back end. That's how you can create a book that generates back end opportunities. These core chapters are your meat and potatoes, focusing on delivering value. What is the problems? And then you're solving those problems. What are the stories that are related to those problems that you've experienced? And why should the reader care? When you break it down like this, it becomes very fluid. Okay, it becomes very fluid. And in these chapters, you're telling stories, you're sharing lessons, you're sharing what to do next. And that's how you're going to build rapport with the reader and also teach the reader so they can solve the problem, which is why they picked up your book in the first place. These things will get your book done quickly and done very efficiently. And then you want to have the last section, which is what I call the wrap-up section. So one of the things that I've learned over time, especially as someone who reads tons and tons of books over my life, is that you're only going to take a few things away from every book that you read. Now, the more you love the book, maybe you take a little bit more. The less you love a book, you might take a little bit less. But on average, you're going to take a few core things away. Whether you choose to implement them or not is entirely up to you. So as an author, if I can understand the reader psychology, then what I want to do is I want to make sure that they have all the key points as many times as possible in the most easily digestible way. And so that's why section 3 is the wrap-up. And the wrap-up, what you're going to do is you're going to recap what you shared. You're going to tell them again, and then you're going to tell them again. But this is where you include a summary chapter. Then you're going to tie it all together, right? Bring it home full circle. And that's going to help them really put it all together so that they know what can come next. And specifically in your book, sometimes it's great when they solve that from your book, you can start to introduce what will happen next so that they can know how to take those next steps. And the last thing that I love to do in all of my books is I love to add a here's what to do next section. This is where I direct people who have finished the book and made it to the very end on what steps to take next should they want more of me or my book. An example of this would be if you're a motivational speaker, at the end you can say, here's what to do next. If you really enjoyed this book and you want to book X to speak, please email this with the top subject line, speaker. If you want to direct people to book a call, if you want people to get downloads, the free resources in your book, you want to show them what they can do next. Follow you on social media. These are all things that you can include in that particular avenue. So those are the sections of how you're going to write your book. And the last piece here is now that you're going to start writing, you're probably like, well, what are some of the best practices? Let me break it down for you. So the best practices when it comes to writing a book, and I have some pretty strong beliefs on this because I've seen it so many times and I've personally gone through it. The most important one that I have found to be the most valuable is the tip, don't edit as you go. Our natural minds are going to see the red, see the green squigglies and want to make changes. Our natural mind is going to write it and be like, I could have written that better. But what our goal is with this rough draft is to get everything onto paper. So if you spend time editing over and over and over again, you're going to hinder your progress. It's going to increase your timeline and you're still going to be right where you were. And I'll tell you this, an average rough draft is better than a great single chapter. 10 out of 10 times, I would rather take a completed rough draft over what I think is a perfected great chapter, because I'll tell you the truth, that great chapter that you think is great and perfect, and you still have the 15 other ones to create, You're still going to have to edit that one down the road later. So I would rather you have a good rough draft than a great first chapter, okay? Focus on one book at a time. One of the things that can really slow people down is they're like, I got this idea, so they're writing multiple books at a different time. Really, really focus on writing one book at a time, and then you can move on to the next one. It makes the process much easier, simple, and easier for your mind to handle it. But another best practice is to have a Google Doc and a Word doc. My personal preference is I like to write on Microsoft Word. So I'll write on Word, I'll have a Google Doc open, I'll copy and paste it. That way I can save it multiple times throughout the writing session, both on Word, and then I can also have a copy that lives in the online world through my Google Docs. This is just a really great way to protect yourself in case one of your programs goes down, your internet goes out, something happens, you still have a copy that you can access. I do a lot of my book writing for my fourth book on an airplane. So for me, it was really advantageous because I had Microsoft Word and I didn't have internet access on this on a lot of plane rides. And some of those were intentional, some of them I just didn't have it. But the reason for that was so that I could just continue writing without distractions. Next is writing your book at this stage is the only priority. One of the things I see so many people do is they're writing their book and they're trying to do everything else at the same time. No. When you write your book, this is the most important priority because you can't market a book that doesn't exist. You can't edit a book that's not done. You can't publish a book that doesn't yet have a finished manuscript. So your only priority should be writing this book. I hope that gives you permission to stop worrying about all these other things and just write. If you want to document what you're writing, that's great. But don't worry about the marketing, the strategy, the editing. Don't worry about any of that stuff until your rough draft is complete. Next is to celebrate every chapter, celebrate every week, celebrate every writing session, celebrate every milestone. I think this is so important because we got to celebrate the wins. You're doing this. You're writing a book. For some of you, this might be a 20 plus year dream. For others of you, you know that this is the vehicle to your next big speaking gig or getting on bigger stages. Embrace it, feel it, live it, celebrate the shit out of that. All right? That's what it's all about. As needed, review your outline. Okay? Review your outline to make sure you're staying on track and you're not just going on crazy tangents that don't really have any relevance to what you already decided was the most important pieces of your story. When you can review your outline, follow up on it, that will help you also not edit as you go. It'll help you keep moving forward because guys, remember, you'll have time to review this later. Talk to your reader as you're writing it. Talk to your reader as you're writing it. This is one of my favorite things in today's world with books is imagine you're talking to the reader. Like type it as you would speak it. We'll make it all grammatically correct and everything else at the end. That's part of the process, but just flow, feel it. I guarantee you've talked about your book content for hours and hours and hours, whether you've been paid to do it or whether you haven't. Guarantee that writing your book is not the first time you've ever said anything or thought it. Talk to them, let it out, feel it. Rely on your coach, rely on your team, rely on your accountability partner. This is a process. Writing a book requires work. Everybody wants to write a book. Few people actually do. Why? Because it's hard. But we're making it easier through videos like this. So rely on your team. If you work with a company like ours, we're going to get you a writing coach. We're going to make sure that you have the right support, the right accountability. If you're not working with the team and you're writing it on your own, make sure you have an accountability partner. Okay? And then post social media on your progress and keep on going when it gets hard. I promise you. It will get hard. I promise you. But what I can also promise you is that the relief, the feeling, the elation, the joy, the excitement, once that rough draft is complete, it's a beautiful thing. It's an absolutely beautiful thing. So keep on going even when it's hard. Rely on your team and let's rock and roll. So that is the writing best practices. And so if you want to really dig deep into how to write a book, full-length book in an hour a day, then I'd encourage you to grab a copy of my book, Big Idea to Bestseller. This is the ultimate guide on how to write, publish, and launch a nonfiction book so you can grow your business and make an impact. I want to give this to you for free because I think this is an invaluable resource on actually writing your book. You can go ahead and make notes in the book while you're writing your book. It makes it super, super efficient. So go to bigideatobestseller.com/free-book and you can get a free copy of this. Just cover the shipping and we'll take care of it and send it straight to your doorstep. And if you know that writing a book is a priority for you and you're ready to rock and roll, maybe you've been writing for a while and you're stuck, or maybe you're getting ready to write your book and you just know you want a team to really hold you accountable and help you get this thing done, then go to bigideatobestseller.com/call and you can book a call with our team to discuss your book idea. We'll create your roadmap. We'll talk about your vision. We'll talk about what could stop you. We'll show you where you get support. And then we'll actually build out your roadmap of how you can go from wherever you're at right now all the way through a best-selling book launch. So that's what we got today. That's how to write a quality full-length book in less than an hour a day. You got this. Let me know what your book is about in the comments. I'm super excited to see where you go and watch you take off.